Well, the Democrats have continued to blow up their very own party as they have gone all the way down to the judicial coup, as this is their last leg that they had to stand on. The Democrats, they recruited all these judges right before everything else went, before Donald Trump went and took office. As they went and they spent as much money as they can, and then they tried to lock them in the CR. But the very last leg to try to remain power, really to go against your will as the voters who voted for Donald Trump to carry out what you voted for. To have the economy, to deportations, to everything else that Donald Trump openly ran on, including programs like 𝕏. Now, these unelected judges, they think that they have the right, just like the deep state does, to rule over you because they think that they are better and smarter and wiser. And so therefore, they get to go and they get to decide that basically Mother May I, right? Or Simon Says to everything that Donald Trump does, period. They think that they have the right to then take that away, which is obviously false. However, when we have like the separation of powers, what it's supposed to be is you have the three branches of the federal government. You have the executive branch and they have executive authority. And then you have Congress and they have their own authority. And then you have the judicial branch and they have their own authority. And while there is some wrap between them, you don't have that one side of the federal government gets to rule on any other side of the government completely. For example, like Congress has the exclusive right to write laws. However, it does get through some checks and balances, right? They write a law, it goes through the House, goes through the Senate. The president then has to sign that law. If the president chooses not to sign that law, veto, then it goes back into Congress and they need 2/3 to override his veto. And so that would be an example of Congress having exclusive rights, but there are check and balances. However, what the Democrats try and do with these activist judges is write law from the bench. Essentially, they're saying that there's nothing off limit for these judges. Like Donald Trump has to clear anything he does with 600 federal judges. Where is SCOTUS? Where is Congress when all this is happening to our president? Hey, this is a judicial coup. And it's our job now that we must fight back and we must defeat this coup. And we had some relief today, fortunately, but there's still, I think, over 150 lawsuits that Donald Trump is trying to go through. And the thing is, understand about this coup is that these judges and these Democrats, they know they're eventually going to lose. So when they go through about all their separation of powers and their constitutional crisis, what they're really trying to do is they're trying to lock Donald Trump in a no-win situation, right? Where they go and they do what they call a judge shop. And this is essentially where these Democrats, they will file lawsuits where they think they have very friendly judges that they can do anywhere in the country, right? So go in New York or go in California. Certainly not like Florida or Kansas or Tennessee, right? So they go there and then they try to get where they have very friendly judges, and then they magically somehow over and over again get the most activist judge that they can find that will just write any rule from the bench like we're going through here with the tariffs. Donald Trump has exclusive rights to these tariffs, bar none. And these judges, they're trying to take that away from him through there's two judges all at the same time that essentially said that Donald Trump didn't have the authority to write these tariffs when he absolutely does. And fortunately, we got some relief from the U.S. Court of Appeals today, who paused these injunctions why Donald Trump goes through the appeal process, which he will, of course, win. And SCOTUS should be shutting this down immediately. This is probably the most un-American thing one of the things that can happen to our country. If this is how communism happens. You look at places like Brazil or Romania or what's happening in Europe, they essentially take all authority away from those who are elected and try to give it to these judges. Close to 80 million of you voted for Donald Trump. Now, how many of you voted for any of these judges? Right? Absolutely not a single one of you. But they think that because they put these judges in place, that they're going to slow down Trump, and hopefully with their goal really at the end, because they know they can't win, their goal at the end is hoping that they slow him down enough that the clock runs out. And then once the clock runs out, they hope to get back to White House. And then the deep state just comes roaring back, just like it did from 2019 to 2020. At the end of the day, this is ultimately the fight that we have to fight. As Donald Trump has proven in his plan, the way he views our country is that the federal government has grown way too big. And this is what we call it, the deep state or the blob. These unelected bureaucrats that think they have the ultimate authority to rule over your life. Just like the liberal elites, when they lie and they pretend that they hate billionaires or they hate the people who are connected, it's really the Democrats who have most of the billionaires. Do you notice that? Virtually every single billionaire is on the Democrat side. You never hear them talking about the Soroses or Amazon or the any of the others. But all of a sudden, like Elon Musk, who's based on the left his entire life, he decides that he's going to go with Donald Trump, and all of a sudden he's now the worst person ever. Or Donald Trump, who was a New York Democrat for most of his life. However, when they go back and they just, all they care about, the Democrats, is 100%, they only care about power. That is it. There is nothing else. And they will say or they will do anything to push their isms, whether it be liberalism or progressivism or socialism. All these isms that are really just another words for communism. Do not doubt me on that for a single second. The liberals, the Democrats, they hate our Constitution. Just like they despise you. For they are the elites. They are your betters. They have Ivy League degrees. They are high above you in their lofty ivory towers. And they think it is their right to rule over you. They never, ever doubt that for a second. Anything else they say is a bald-faced lie. The only thing they care about, the one and only thing, is that they have power. And you just ignore what they say and look at the evidence. Every time the Democrats have power, and they help the rhinos, what happens? The federal government expands, the political sector goes away, and there's more and more regulations. And then they always find a way to try to tax you into basically into poverty, into being enslaved to them. And in the Democrats' mind, this is all mixed around Marxism. And it's different here in the United States. It's traditional Marxism, where essentially what they try to do is they try to separate people by class. You have the haves and you have the have-nots. The rich and the poor, the landowners and the non-landowners. And they try to divide the country down those lines and then split them in half, cause it to collapse, and then the Democrats, wherever they are in the world, they are always communists, and they go and they get power from the ashes, and then they never give it back. All of a sudden, there's no more swinging right and left. You have the one party in power, and then you have just enough of an opposite party that it looks like there's opposition, but there's really never not. And we've even seen that here in the United States. How many times have you seen where they will have, the Democrats will have in power, but the Republicans will just go along with them? Right? They'll go and they will pass whatever bill the Democrats want. It will go in the Senate, and then Mitch McConnell gets enough of his little crony buddies to sign away everything the Democrats want, and we get nothing. Or how often did Mike Johnson, now that he's in power in the House, how often did he try to get something through when he knew there was no chance? So he would go and he would make a bill, and he would talk really tough, and he'd say how he was going to be conservative and do all the ballots, and he'd try to put the bill through. The Democrats would say, no, we're not doing it. And then what would Mike Johnson immediately do? Oh, well, I'm sorry. I tried. We did our best, but we can't shut down the government. We can't actually fight back, so we're just going to lose again. Sorry, we did our best. Maybe we'll try again on the next bill. And then all of a sudden, the Democrats get everything they want again. I mean, how many of you are absolutely sick of seeing this happen over and over and over again? Because I know I am. I want our country back. And there's at least 77 million of you who agreed and voted for Donald Trump. And we did not vote and we did not fight this far just to have the Democrats try to take it away again with what? Unelected judges. See, that's the Democrats on their back foot. Because they know they're losing, and this is the one spot that they have left. And once these activist judges lose, that's it for them. And they're going to try delaying Congress, but there's many other ways around this that Trump can get to in the future. Well, we have to fight back now, and we have to put so much pressure on Congress that they do Trump's will, or they lose their jobs. And I talk about these activist judges a lot, and one of the things I often try to say is when Donald Trump, when he's kind of going along with it, and when he's not, we should really tell these judges to go pound sand. Because at the end of the day, they do not have the authority that they think they do. They have absolutely zero authority to tell Trump like he can't deport illegal immigrants. They have zero authority over telling Donald Trump that he can't put in place tariffs. That is Donald Trump's exclusive right as the president of the United States. And these judges, they have no say whatsoever over foreign policy. It's not the judges up here over all of us, and then Congress and the president down here. That's not equal power. And anything the Democrats try to lie about separation of powers, or about the constitutional crisis, or the threat to democracy, that is all a bald-faced lie, because they are the threat to the Constitution. It's the Democrats who are a threat to what they call the bureaucracy, but really to the democracy, but really it is their bureaucracy. And it's amazing how the Democrats, they never miss on judges. Do you notice that? Like somehow they always find the most radical political hack to put a robe on, who just doesn't care what any laws are, and they will sign anything, just like they're doing with their Soros-backed DAs all throughout these Democrat strongholds, letting criminals go free again, or ignoring certain laws and enforcing other laws. This is another hallmark of communism. This is the point in Donald Trump's presidency where we're coming to a head. Because so far, for the most part, he has quietly ignored these judges, but not blatantly and openly. There was at the press conference today when she was being very clear, and she was saying on a press briefing that we're not gonna defy the judges, but we expect to win in court. And this is the part of Trump, and a lot of us are like, why don't you fight back? Why don't you just ignore these judges? We all know they don't have the authority to do so. So why don't you just ignore every single one of them? But at the end of the day, with these judges, is Trump is doing something that is very smart. And what he is doing is he's getting the ball rolling so fast that we can get through the whole court process before time runs out. One of the mistakes that I think was in his first administration was that he didn't realize how deep the deep state was until it got too late. And then when he tried to go through the lawsuits and go through court, time ran out on him, and Biden came in and just dropped all of it with his own DOJ, his own FBI, and signed all his own new executive orders, at least at the beginning. I mean, who knows who signed ones at the end? That's a story for a different day. But now Trump is moving so fast that their fake rage machine can no longer keep up. And so the Democrats have been forced to activate their activist judges. It was just like Senator Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren said, how they were going to try to get as many judges in place to fight Donald Trump. But see, they're not really fighting Donald Trump. Who they're really fighting is you, the American voters. What you, the American people, voted for when Donald Trump went on the campaign trail and he said he was going to do all this stuff. And make no mistake, everything Donald Trump is doing is legal. And he will win all these cases in court. But the Democrats, they just don't care. They're going to continue to try to fight. And that's something on their side that at least they do. At least they have the guts to fight. They're not like these weak coward Johnson who says, well, we can't win, so we're just not going to fight. But the Democrats don't care. They fight for every single inch, win or lose. And then when they lose, they always pretend they're a victim. And then when they win, they always use it to punish you and try to expand their power. See, at the end of the day, they're really just a communist virus. We call it a woke mind virus, but it is really just communism, really is a government virus that just expands until there's nothing left. And we've let it go on for far too long. As even we have people like Rand Paul, who I don't know who owns him, but he's certainly not doing what we voted for. I mean, how many times do you have the Democrats, and if they have 51 senators, all 51 senators will vote down party line. But on our side of the fence, that almost never happens. There's always a couple who claim to be Republicans, right? Who claim to be conservatives, but really they are neoliberals. Okay, they are Democrats in every word. We call them rhinos or shiny shoe Republicans. Hey, there's nothing conservative and there's nothing Republican about these people. Just like as Donald Trump fights back and continues to expose all of them, just like Rand Paul here, as I try to get ahead real quick because I jumped ahead a bit, but he got into it recently where he's been fighting against the tariffs. And this was a couple of weeks ago, remember, where he was saying that he had the votes in the Senate to block Donald Trump's tariffs, essentially take them away and give them back to the Senate. As he was calling this, it was going to be one of the worst things that happened to our country, and that he was going to work with the Democrats to usurp Donald Trump's authority that you voted for, because he is just another rhino. Plain and simple. He's an American last, anti-conservative rhino. And why people like Ron Paul and Macy and the others, why they talk really tough when they're in front of a camera or when they're going and they're posting on X, make no mistake for a second, there is nothing conservative about these people. And he opposed the tariffs. He thought he had the votes. And even if he had won the votes, which he didn't, it still would have never got past the House. And Donald Trump would have just vetoed it anyways. And then, of course, they had no way that they would have overridden his veto. So it was a complete waste of time, just like what the Democrats do over and over again. Something they don't like, they try to waste as much time as they can until they have enough power that they can go in and they can get through what they want to get through. So he got into it with, this is Ron Paul, got into it with Stephen Miller, who I think has been one of Donald Trump's very best picks. So starting with Ron Paul here, he goes, the big beautiful bill increases military border spending by over $300 billion, exceeding most estimates found in Dodge cuts. And then he goes on about the military industrial complex. Hey, this is Ron Paul lying just like the Democrats do. Because these estimates that he's talking about go from a think tank that has been wrong on every single issue. Just like when they said that Donald Trump was going to hurt the economy in his first administration, and he was wrong, or the eggs, or the stock market. It goes on and on and on and on. These people, these so-called experts, they're constantly wrong, but they think they can keep on lying to you. And Stephen Miller, he correctly points it out. The most visible campaign promise was to fully and forcibly enforce the immigration laws of the United States. This bill codifies that promise as Donald Trump promised, and these judges are trying to fight to stop. If we don't solve mass migration, then nothing else in society works. And if these measures are not included in the bill, Republicans would never need Democrat votes in the annual appropriation bills process, including the wall. Furthermore, splitting the defense and homeland priorities out of an annual appropriations process would be easier to reduce annual appropriations because the Democrats won't have these legislative hostages as financial extortion. Facts. Absolutely facts. As Ron Paul just embarrasses himself again. And this is why it's so important for us to fight back. Because when we fight back against these people, then they can't pretend that they're Republican. They can't pretend that they're conservative and then go into Washington, D.C. and backstab you again behind closed doors. This forces them to out themselves as who they really are. Now, you voted for immigration, that we want legal immigration, but illegal immigration has to stop. And even on CBS's poll, CNN's poll, when they ran their own numbers, and they were shocked by their own audience as they found that 56% of the very own fake news audience was for 100% deportation. Let's be clear that anyone that comes in this country illegally is a criminal. And being deported is the due process for entering this country illegally. But we need to give Donald Trump his border bill. And the Republicans, they already have the votes. And these kind of bills, you don't need the 60 votes. We just need 51. We already have it. And now X and others need to put so much pressure on these rhinos that they either vote for it or will end their career. Because that's the one thing they're more scared about than anything else, more than lobbyists, more than being called a racist or a bigot or a homophobe. The one thing that they're absolutely scared of is that they will lose their career. They will lose their access to Washington, D.C. And that's the one pain point that we can really expose. The Supreme Court, they need to show up and they need to do their job. Okay, they don't have to wait years. This is complete and utter BS. And I personally think that Roberts is the center of this judicial coup against Donald Trump. But really, his judicial coup against you, the American voters, and what you voted for, because that is the way that our Constitution works. You're supposed to vote for your leaders, and they go and they carry out your will in Washington. And if they don't, then you vote them out of office. But they built such a deep, deep state that they don't think that they answer to you anymore until we prove them otherwise. The judicial coup is going to fail. It's going to fail now or it's going to fail later, but either way, it's going to fail. And these delay tactics, we must put an end to. So SCOTUS needs to either stand up or Congress needs to stand up, and they need to stop this immediately or we will end their careers. And my clock is blinking at me because I'm way over, and we're going to go back. When we come back, we're going to have Dan Bongino, the Deputy Department of the FBI. He has a huge revelation that we're going to go through. And then David Hogg, he also made a huge mistake talking to the Project Veritas, and he asked a major Democrat in part 2. We're going to play that and a whole lot more after we come back from this greedy profit break. You're not going to miss it. This is the Cash Loren Show. Well, we have another story that's breaking out as we're going to come through, and we're talking about Dan Bongino, as he had gone into Fox Morning and he had shared some huge evidence that they had discovered that the FBI was trying to hide from them. As we've often talked about how the deep state, how they think that it's their right to rule over you. But we will continue to expose this corruption every single day, as I am your host, Cash Loren, your bright shining light of truth through the deep state's news, their fake hoaxes, and the fog of lies from the Democrats and their party and their friends over the fake news networks, making the liberals cry tears that are saltier than you-know-whose fries. And we're going to get into Dan Bongino's interview in a moment, but first, this is breaking during break, and so I'm kind of looking away at my screen as I'm reading what happened, and part of what I do commercials is that this will happen, is something will break, and then it, suddenly scrambling as it got 3 minutes of commercials to come up to it. So this is the last week we had talked about how the department under Pete Hegseth, the military, that they were finding a lot of waste in especially the IT department, and that there was a lot of suggestions that a lot of leaked information comes out of IT. This is classified information that shouldn't have access, it's given away to like foreign agents or foreign governments. People will sell it outside, but they shouldn't. Well, during break, we had this happen where an IT specialist employed the Defense Intelligence Agency, this DIA, so this is exactly what we're talking about, was arrested for attempting to provide classified information to friendly foreign governments because he did not agree or align with the values of this information of this administration. Well, this points exactly to what we're talking about. See, these arrogant swamp creatures, as they've convinced themselves through Marxism that they are 100% right, that no matter what they do, as long as the end justifies the means, right? So if they hate Donald Trump, then anything they do is justified because Donald Trump is bad. That was the whole entire point of calling Donald Trump something like Hitler or fascist. See, it doesn't even matter if they believe it or not, because they know it's not true. Just like Hitler, was nothing right-wing about Hitler or the Nazi movement. These were left-wing Democrat socialists. Then, now, whether they want to call them communists or they want to call them liberals or progressives or socialists, it's all the same isms over and over and over again. It's the same people just wrapped in a different package. So this lie that somehow the right was with the Nazis is absolutely 100% BS. They all know it, but what they do is they don't care because the left keeps calling you that. Then that justifies anything they do. Because what would you do to stop Hitler if you can go back, right? What crime would be put off limits? And that's what they 100% understand. So that's why they keep trying to rephrase these words, just like this IT person did. Well, they don't agree with the administration, and this administration is bad, and this administration is evil. So that justifies them leaking classified information to a foreign government. And if they happen to make a buck at the same time, well, hey, that's just, butter on the bread. Good for them. And a lot of them have been finding out, and I hope we're just now getting started, is how deep this deep state is, far deeper than many even realize. But this is something that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel have been struggling with a lot as they go through and they start to expose all these people and what they're trying to do behind closed doors, because they think that they are your betters and that anything they do is justified because Trump is evil. So what the FBI did, as we get into Dan Bongino, is when him and Kash Patel came in, they tried to hide information from Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, and he calls it a room. So we're going to play this clip here as Dan Bongino, he does his first solo interview with Fox News, and this is what he had to say.
There who are really horrified at what happened. And there was a room, and we found stuff. A lot of stuff.
A hidden room.
I wouldn't call it hidden, but hidden from us at least, and not mentioned to us. And then we found stuff in there, and a lot of it's from the Comey era, and we are working our damnedest right now to declassify. And just so you know, and you read some of the stuff we found that, by the way, was not processed through the normal procedure, digitizing it, putting in FBI records. We found it in bags, hiding under Jim Comey's FBI. Quickly. You're going to be...
Yeah, he says he's going to release all of this. What do you think is in those bags? All right, what were they hiding that they wouldn't even digitalize? They're just trying to keep paper copies of. And I'm also wondering, why didn't they destroy this stuff? Or maybe they ran out of time. How much did they actually destroyed? How much is gone? What does this lead to? Does this lead to like the January 6th pipe bombers? Does this lead to like the January 6th committee? Is this covering up for everything that happened with Biden? I mean, how long do they know about the cancer or dementia? Or how about all the covers of Biden's administration and his family, like Hunter Biden and Burisma, and their links to China? I mean, how deep does this rabbit hole go? He's talking about going all the way back to the Comey era. And so this is Comey, who was before Wray, who was the FBI, head of the FBI. And he was the main, I would say, law enforcement arm of the Russia hoax. And how these hoaxes work is that these deep state officials, just like the IT agent, but they're doing to foreign agents, but what they'll do is they'll leak information to the fake news networks. And then the fake news networks, they will write articles that are, sources say, or people inside the administration, or experts say. Right, so they start running all the articles, and then all of a sudden the Democrats get it, and they start talking about it. And then it goes back to the deep state, and the deep state says, well, if all this is writing articles, and the Democrats talking about, well, when there's smoke, there's fire, so we need to open up investigation, and then it leads back around. The FBI is opening an investigation. Russia. But it was all a hoax right from the get-go. The deep state knew it. The mainstream media knew it. The Democrats knew it. And when the deep state went back again, they also all knew it was hoax and fake, and they didn't care. And then they wonder why these experts don't have any authority anymore, why mainstream media has absolutely no influence anymore. It's for these reasons. So Comey was at the very center of Russia. As it went through the Steele dossier, which is completely made up, paid for by the Clintons. And then the FBI used this to open up Russia. The mainstream media ran with it and put Donald Trump's administration through 2 years of hell when they all knew it was fake. They all knew it was a lie. This is an actual coup. Okay, this was an actual attempt to undermine our democracy, to take away your vote of who you voted for to run the federal government. And it still hasn't stopped to this day. They still try to use Russia in all their hoaxes, even to this very single day. And I think some of them have absolutely convinced themselves. I mean, some of them might even believe still that Russia was real. And this is the Comey that got just back in the news as he just wrote his book from a couple weeks ago. And then he was the one that posted that picture on Instagram where it said 8647. and seashells on the beach. Everybody knows what that means. Every single person. 86, the assassination. 47, President Donald Trump. Okay, a child knows what he means. And who believes him for a single second that one, Comey just happened to be walking on the beach and came up the shells out as 86, 47, and then took a picture, didn't know what they meant, and posted on Instagram. And then once there's the backlash, I was like, oh, well, I didn't know. I just, I don't agree with the backlash. That's not what it meant, obviously. But I took it down because I didn't want to be a part of any of that. Right? The same Comey who knew Russia was a hoax and opened up investigations and undermined Donald Trump for years, for as long as they possibly could until he was fired. And then Chris Wray, but that's a whole different story. Now, Dan Bongino, he is saying, wait until you read what's in this stuff. And he talks about, in this clip, he talks about how some of the classified information that it's not really that easy for them to declassify, because it belongs to different departments. So you have to have a certain classification, I guess, to read it, but to actually release it is different classifications. And I wonder, why can't they just take this stuff to Trump? I mean, Trump is the ultimate authority on classified information. I mean, he can declassify anything he wants, whether it be with a swipe of a pen or a thought, whatever the case may be. So I don't know why this is happening the way it is. I suspect and I hope that the reason why is because they're getting ready for arrests. And they don't want the information out there till there's handcuffs. I really hope that's the reason why this is happening. I truly believe Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, right? When Kash Patel wrote like Government Gangsters, an incredible book, and then Dan Bongino has been one of the great podcasters talking about how corrupt the deep state is. And now they're overseeing a huge organization. And if you want to see the deep state and you want to see the swamp and you want to see how Washington, D.C. actually works, you are seeing it right now. And I think it's far deeper, just like the IT agent. How much is this happening all the time? You remember when raids were happening with ICE and that they kept releasing information and a bunch of people got fired and a few got arrested? And then we have a mayor who just doxed a bunch of ICE agents just the other day. And in the end of the day, with all this, is they're going to have to get arrested. And if they don't get arrested, they're just going to keep doing this. Okay, people are going to have to be arrested and people are going to have to be prosecuted. Sooner or later, if there's no consequences, it's just going to keep getting worse because this is how this beast grows. Right? Just like any criminal, they start small, and then as they get away with more and more crimes, they become more and more bold. And the crimes get bigger and bigger and bigger till they're eventually caught. The deep state is no different, as they've had all this tax money that's guaranteed to come in with absolutely no oversight. And then you've had the former FBI and you've had the former DOJ and all the other regulatory agencies had just decided that, they're not going to enforce laws. They're just going to look the other way. And so it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And this has led to $5 trillion coming in and $10 trillion going out. Or excuse me, $7 trillion going out the door. And no one really knows where this money is going and how many backroom deals they're making and how much this money is getting pocketed into all these career useless people. When now we have Donald Trump and his administration are trying to do everything that we voted for. For example, right, having tariffs, as tariffs will force manufacturing to come back to the United States and force us from being ripped off. As the old lie goes, they lie about how, we have to send everything overseas so you have cheap goods. Right? But they've been doing this for close to 50 years now. And what are your goods are cheaper? What's better? You're just getting crap from China. It's the quality that's going down. I mean, your cost of living has gone way up. Just go back 4 years, 10 years, ask your parents how much things cost. And I'm not just talking about like a burger was $1 and then it was 25 cents and now it's $5. I don't just mean that. I just mean the percentage of your income. Right? Where groceries were maybe like 10% and now they're 30 or 40%. As inflation has gone way up and wages haven't kept up. And this is all caused by these Democrats and these leftist policies that they don't want you to know about. And this is why they fought so hard for rhinos like Rand Paul and all these judges, because as soon as you realize that tariffs work And as soon as you realize that they have been lying to you this entire time, this is going to be like the Joe Biden debate moment. Because the independent thinkers that are like you, the ones that think the way that we think, you already know because you're the ones that pay attention and you're the ones that think about this stuff. But this is going to be a lot different for the people who are casuals, who I call normies, who don't pay really close attention, who don't realize how deep and how bad this stuff is. And they probably have an inkling of it. They probably have an idea. But just like when Joe Biden, right, when he went on that debate stage to make my day, pal, and then Donald Trump made his day, pal, and it was far worse than exposing Biden. What this really did is exposed that the mainstream media was lying. Okay, we knew the mainstream media was lying, but to the normies, to the casuals, all of a sudden they realized, holy crap, they've been lying this entire time. They knew. And that's what Jake Tapper's hoax book is all about. Okay, he's not trying to expose the Biden administration because make no mistake, if Biden had won or Kamala had won, the chances that Jake Tapper's book coming out are zero. But what they're trying to do, what the new hoax is they're trying to throw Joe Biden's administration under the bus. Okay, not the Democrats, Joe Biden's administration, calling it basically a fluke that they were lying to fake news when fake news is in on it the whole time. Okay, do not doubt that for a second. Okay, if people like me, if I could find the clips and I could find all the different things that Joe Biden was doing, I mean, it was all out there. Whether he was staring at walls, or he couldn't find his way off stage, or he'd look around lost, or he'd just start to mumble nonsense, or they were so paranoid that he couldn't go to a bench and talk to press. And so they give him these pamphlets. Remember when those got caught? And they'd have names on them who he's supposed to call. And Joe Biden's mind was so far gone that he would forget that he wasn't supposed to say things like that. He looked down, oh, I'm supposed to call on you, and you're supposed to ask me this. And all the aides and everything. Okay, everybody out, get out. They all knew. And this is what I hope and I pray that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, I really hope that they haven't joined the deep state. I know a lot of MAGA is completely paranoid about this right now because they're saying, like, you promised the Epstein list on day one, so where is it? It might not even exist anymore. And and we don't know what's happening inside. Okay, what's happening inside these meetings and inside these classified when they're talking to each other. I say for now, give them time. Okay, this deep state is far deeper than we thought it was. If they're just now finding entire rooms of hidden information that they were never supposed to find, how much were they able to destroy? You know, what is left? And who's going to go to prison? Because I want it just as much as you do. People like Fauci, people like Adam Schiff, people like Comey, people like Pelosi, they've been enjoying the two-tier justice system for far too long. And they must be held accountable. I agree. And man, my clock is so mad at me. We're way past another break. We're going to finish this thought. Okay, the deep state runs much deeper than we thought it was. And they're willing to commit major felonies because they never thought that they would get caught. Kash Patel in his book calls them government gangsters. If it wasn't for Kash Patel and his work, how much less would we know about Russia? So give them time, is all I'm saying. Is don't give up yet. I personally think that this is much deeper, and I hope that we're coming up to 5 months in now. We're just past 4 months, so give it time. With that, we're way up against the break. We have a lot more to cover, including the corruption, the Democrat Party that completely collapsing on themselves, and a whole lot more. As we have some funny clips for you, you're not going to miss them. We'll be back after this greedy profit break. This is the Cash Loren Show. Well, the Democrat Party is absolutely collapsing, as the one thing that they thought would never happen was Donald Trump returning to the White House and putting into place what you voted for against their rule over you. To the Democrats, they think themselves as the elite, and they think themselves as the better. They don't see themselves as serving you. They think it is their job to rule you. And as all their corruption is being exposed and shown to the world, they are continuing to panic and go on their back feet. And the hoaxes and stuff that they're going through are absolutely hilarious. One of the things that they did is they decided that they had a problem in the 2024 election. As this is going on from all the way back from Barack Hussein Obama, who decided that he was going to reclassify Marxism instead of the traditional class base, those who had money and those who don't, because in America, too many people have money and not enough that they weren't able to divide the country enough. So instead, they made it all about race. I mean, you notice how it was Barack Hussein Obama, and all of a sudden we're starting to get like BLM, and we're starting to get Antifa, and all these racist, Marxist groups, and as they start trying to divide the country by race. On the other side of that is then they decided that instead of demonizing people because of their wealth, which they still try to do, but under the Marxists, they decided then that they're going to instead demonize people because of the color of their skin. So they're going to arbitrarily decide that people who are white are bad and people who are not white are good. This is traditional Marxism, just repackaged through a racial lens. Well, that ended up backfiring on them, just like on the class side did, but on the race side, the problem for them is there's too many people, one, that were white males, but then also people from all across different races didn't like this, because at the end of the day, your race doesn't matter. Not like the Democrats say it does. Is people who think like us, and most of America, we don't care what color your skin is. I couldn't care less or what your background is. What I care about, and what most Americans care about, is who is you as a person? Are you the kind of person that you want to be friends with? Are you the kind of person that, want the kids to be around? And even if not, you have the right to go and work and earn for your family. This is not a race-based issue. But the Democrats try to make it about race because that was their pathway to separating the country in half so that they can divide, grow their government, but essentially all they wanted to do is this was a communist revolution. And the Democrats were one election away from finishing this communist revolution. But 2024 blew up in their face because they lost across everybody except I think it was black women. But every other demographic, and especially what shocked them the most, I think, was they lost the young votes as Trump gained, I think, 30-something% across the young votes. And this made them absolutely panic. And this brings up to now they're trying to get them all back. And one of the things they did is they brought in David Hogg. But the problem with the Democrats are so used to unity is people like David Hogg, he doesn't think the way that the old Democrats do. Okay, he's not better than them. He's more crazy than them. They understand what the young Democrats who've been radicalized through these public schools and through these universities. Okay, they think that Chuck Schumer's not crazy enough. Okay, they think Nancy Pelosi is not insane enough. Okay, they think Bernie Sanders doesn't go far enough. They want more socialism. They want more progressivism because they want communism. The Democrat Party is literally communist now. And that's why they've seen so many people leave their party, because even the people like Elon Musk and the RFKs and the Tulsi Gabbards and all you out there who are like kind of consider themselves middle left or believe that with the old Democrat lie that they're about the workers and they're for free speech and unions and all that stuff, all blatant lies. They only ever cared about was having their own power. So now this is causing the Democrat Party to split in half and panic because they never thought that Trump would come back and expose the deep state and expose the intelligence agencies that they don't have the power that the Democrats tried to lie about. And Project Veritas, who loves to get people on camera and expose them, got David Hogg to start talking to one of their reporters, and he threw Nancy Pelosi under the bus. And what's kind of funny about this is as David Hogg, as the Democrats have recruited these people, it was David Hogg that wanted $20 million to primary Democrats that weren't crazy enough. but he's just fine with crime too. But he was afraid as he wanted gun protection or to take away your guns. So he was perfectly fine with Democrats committing crimes because he didn't want the Democrats to stop him from taking away your guns. Let's take a listen to this clip.
I would say Pelosi's actually very good at her job. I don't agree with the stock trading stuff. I mean, she gets better returns than almost every hedge fund in this city every year. Some of these members of Congress make trades that are like way too well timed to not have like insider knowledge. They happen to be some of the best financial analysts in human history.
Have you spoken against that?
I've talked to them in the past, but it's also like, I know that if I pick that fight, it's going to be harder for us to get gun control passed, so I pick my battle. Like, the hardest part about my job is I just want to burn everything down, because it's all so corrupt. But you got to pick your battles and slowly build your momentum.
You got to pick your battles and slowly build your momentum. Okay, so Nancy Pelosi is worth about $260 million estimates on $174,000 a year, when her husband is as a hedge fund manager. Okay, so she's clearly, allegedly, I should say allegedly because she hasn't been convicted yet, but Congress consistently outperforms the market with shocking consistency. Now, how would you do that if you didn't have inside information? Right? If you know a law is about to be passed that the public doesn't know about yet, so you go and you invest money into that company, and then all of a sudden that company takes off because of this law, and then you benefit for it. Or let's say that they're about to do some kind of regulation to a different company. So they know that this stock is going to tank when these new regulations come out. And so they sell those stocks and all of a sudden see how they can keep outperforming the market. If it was up to us, I would think many of us would say, you know what? Enough is enough. We're not going for this anymore. How many of you, if you could get on a ballot right now, on the federal ballot, and you were able to vote that Congress could not buy stocks, individual stocks, why would 99% of you buy it, vote for that? Because you all know that this is corrupt. And if you and I did that, let's say I worked for a private company and I knew something was about to go public, so I bought a bunch of stocks, they would put me in prison for doing exactly what a Congress is accused of doing. But the thing about the Democrat Party is they don't care if someone commits crime as long as they're pushing progressive ideology. Just like David Hogg says, is that the end, this is the Marxist lens, justifies the means. So if Nancy Pelosi wants to do inside trading and she wants to then do laws that are for her own benefit, right? Just like the rest of Congress. I mean, if you're in Congress, are you going to do what's in the best interest of your voters? Or are you going to do what's in the best interest for your pocketbooks? I think the answer is pretty obvious. But like David Hogg says, and this is the way the Democrats think, because they are Marxist communists, is that the ends justify the means. So if Nancy Pelosi gets millions of dollars, I'm fine with that, David Hogg says. I mean, I don't really like it, quote unquote, but he's willing to go along with it because he wants to take away your guns. You see how communist and evil these people are? Hey, you have a Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms that shall not be infringed. Yet these arrogant, socialist, progressive, communist dictators, they think that they have the right to take away your guns. And when they argue about mass shootings and all that stuff, you know what's really funny, not funny, but ironic, is that the mass shootings are pretty new. And what happens over and over again is, where do they target? Right? They target places where people can't defend themselves. Why schools? Because schools are like gun-free zones. Soft targets get national media attention. Hey, I guarantee you, if you could carry guns in schools, there'd be no more mass shootings because they would just die. And even if you don't want that, if you secure schools, just like you would secure any building, right? Single entrance, in and out. Metal detectors, whatever. As much as I don't want schools to turn into Fort Knox, when they're being targeted and the kids are at risk, then you got to do what you got to do. Ultimately, I don't want the government involved. I think we should just have more guns. You let me know what you think. And we're way up against the end of the hour. as the rest of these stories are going to have to go back in the stack for another day. We'll be back again tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. This is the Cash Loren Show. Greetings, independent thinkers. We have come to a top of another hour. If you're enjoying this content, please make sure you have subscribed, turn on notifications, but most importantly, share an American First message with your friends and family so we can help fight back against the Democrats and their propagandas over at the fake news networks. Also, take a moment to consider subscribing to us on Locals at the Cash Loren Show, where for a very small amount of money every month, you'll get many additional perks, including your name at the end of videos, like be up the screen here in just a moment, a follow and increase engagement and exclusive lists on that I use on X. That sounds interesting to you. Go over to locals.com at the Cash Loren Show, hit the subscribe button for about a cup of coffee a month, and help us stay independent and free of the fake news networks and bring you the truth every single day, just like these fine patriots have. At the end of the video, be on your screen here in just a moment.